State of the Nation Business Breakfast, which is how the State of the Nation started. So if you're a company out there that wants to get information, or even individual that wants to get information, that wants to hear some of our best guests, we've got our first business breakfast of the year lined up for the 27th of February at the Sandton Convention Center, where we'll have Prince Mashele and Davy Root, two of our most popular contributors, one talking largely about the political situation in South Africa and what to look forward to, and then Davy Root, the renowned economist, who will be looking at the South African economy and what that holds. More information will be in the description below, but come and join us, have a good breakfast, bring some of your clients, and get some insights. You are watching the State of the Nation Political Insider. I'm your host, Mike Sham, and joining us today is the man on the inside, and that's Kuhle Nkamani, a guy who has had, for a young man, he's already had a bit of a career in politics, councillor, treasurer at Action SA. He knows a few people, and he always gives us some stories from the inside, and that's why we love to speak to him. Sadly, he can't join us here today, so we're doing this from me in the studio to Kuhle in his braai. Hello, Kuhle, how are you?
How are you, Mike? I'm actually calling in from a cloudy Pietermaritzburg.
A cloudy Pietermaritzburg. Well, that is interesting, and we'll get into Pietermaritzburg but while we're in KZN, the news that needs to be covered is what happens when Daddy's little princess and Daddy's new favorite employee start having a go at each other. Duduzile Zuma, Floyd Shivambu, some very nasty X posts on X. What do you make of this?
Look, firstly, I think it's to understand that Duduzile is not by herself in terms of these comments that she makes. You know, she's not making comments that are just her perspective. These are comments or sentiments, rather, that are felt by a couple of MKP members. I mean, I was reading an article, I think, was it yesterday, which touched on the regional coordinator of Abagxalasi, which is in Emalahleni, in Mpumalanga, the leader of MK party in that region, who had actually written a scathing letter to President Jacob Zuma about not being in support of Floyd Shivambu. I do think this has been a long time coming, Mike, because, look, I don't have any favorites in the story. But one needs to understand that Floyd Shivambu found himself in a beleaguered situation. He came to a party where I would say one could tell from the outset that he was not welcomed by the masses, especially within KwaZulu-Natal. You know, and I'm saying that from what I see on the streets and from what I hear from various political leaders and what we read. And if you look, I think News 24 wrote an article about Floyd Shivambu basically joining Umkhonto weSizwe and saying that there was a lot of backlash, especially in the youth league of Umkhonto weSizwe. You would know that the leader of the former leader of the youth league, Bonginkosi, what's his name? Bongubuhle, the former SRC. Yes, Kanyile, thank you. The former leader of the SRC, who joined Umkhonto weSizwe, the former youth leader. He, for one, we all know from what we have read and from what we have seen, he did not see eye to eye with Floyd Shivambu, which would obviously mean that Floyd would not have the support of the youth because this guy was the leader of the youth league. And not to forget that in Umkhonto weSizwe, Floyd found himself coming in at a later stage. He's not seen as the founding father of Umkhonto weSizwe. So there are many people that have got a lot of animosity around the situation of various leaders coming into the party and taking certain positions that didn't work the ground before the 29th of May last year. And one of those leaders happened to be Floyd Shivambu, unfortunately. I do know the man to be a very intelligent man. I've met him on 2 or 3 occasions, if I'm not mistaken. He's extremely intelligent. He's someone that could convince you, to to believe what he's saying. But I think he finds himself in a situation where no matter what he says or what he does, I don't think he'll ever be welcomed by MKP members. And yes, the truth is he was brought in to increase their support outside of KwaZulu-Natal. But is that happening? Not really. We've seen in recent by-elections.
Yeah, there's also our old friend, and we discussed it when we were doing our summary of the State of the Nation address. There is that old issue of ideology, which has to come into this, because we know that Jacob Zuma started MK as a revenge project with a stated aim to go back into the ANC. He's also got this very Zulu, very traditionalist vision for the party. We're going to go back to 1800. Floyd Shivambu comes along, writes a manifesto that's basically the old EFF manifesto of Karl Marx, let's go back to the Bolshevik Revolution. So there's an ideological problem here, isn't this? And on top of it, you've got the specter of, is MK a party or is it a family business for the Zumas?
Look, Mike, I think firstly one should look. Mkhonto weSizwe is a party that came across as a conservative party to start with. If we have to take away the image of Jacob Zuma, Floyd Shivambu, and whoever else it is, it's a conservative traditionalist party. Cool. It found a way to identify itself in our politics because we did not have that conservative party outside of the Patriotic Alliance. But here comes the issue, is what you said, Mike. There is an identity clash or a policy clash where there's an individual, in this case being Floyd Shivambu, who comes with the left-wing Marxist, Fanoniist ideology to a very traditionalist, conservative party. Now, don't take anything away from Mkhonto weSizwe, but there were obviously going to be clashes because one needs to know that the ideology that Floyd comes with of being left-wing and Marxist and Fanoniist has never coincided with a traditionalist or conservative policy. If you do study history, you will remember that during the days of Vladimir Lenin, he actually took down the old administration, which was the monarchy in the Soviet Union, or before it was called the Soviet Union. So, the whole left-wing ideology, one should never mistaken it or think of it as being conservative, which is what MK is trying to sort of present itself in society. Now, my advice, looking at this situation, is Mkhonto weSizwe should not change its strategy or its ideology in terms of let us become left-wing, because I feel like ourselves in the media space and ourselves as right-wing capitalists, we have sort of painted Mkhonto weSizwe as a left-wing party, which it's not. It's not a left-wing party by any means. I mean, Mkhonto weSizwe has got a business forum, a whole business forum, which is an identified league within their party, meaning there is no left-wing party that has got, a business forum. The EFF doesn't, So the only type of political parties that would have a business forum are parties that do have a sense of capitalism amongst themselves, which Mkhonto weSizwe does, It's just a case of the certain characters involved, which would make people think that it's a left-wing party. But to be honest, Mkhonto weSizwe needs to stay the way it is. If I have to be neutral now. Why I'm saying that is because we need to reduce the amount of left-wing politics in our society. Correct. Now, the thing is, Mkhonto weSizwe does not popularize the left-wing ideology, but it brings back a conservative ideology, which is good and dangerous at the same time. But it also brings back an ideology of traditionalism or going back to monarchy, which is a bit risky because you ask yourself that as a democratic country, do you want to go back to, a monarchy society? And I feel like that's where Floyd Shivambu, in this case, or the person in question, tends to struggle because he comes into a party that is very traditionalist. He's not from a traditionalist background. So it's going to be interesting to see, even in the new year, being 2025, how does he gel in this party? You know, it's like myself. I got into, when I was still in Action SA, I came from a capitalist background that worked well, but I came from a very conservative background, which tended to clash with the party because they were not as conservative.
So let's circle back to the cause of all the current questioning, and that is Duduzile having a flat-out go at Floyd Shivambu. The way I see it, even though I know that Jacob Zuma has reprimanded her, I think there's very, very limited reprimanding that he would ever do to his daughter. She's, as we know her, she's not about to back off. I don't see this going away. So we could have a proper little civil war on our hands within the party, or am I looking at it incorrectly?
It's possible, Mike, because you must remember that what you have in Umkhonto weSizwe, the way the party is built, you've got a section in KwaZulu-Natal, which is very vibrant, which will back Duduzile and Jacob Zuma for obvious reasons. And then you've got the other parts of the country, like Gauteng, which does have some support, and Limpopo, very minimal, which, from what I've heard, not my opinion, from what I've heard, backs Floyd Shivambu. Now, this could cause a drift in the party. Because now what you could see is, if there's no infighting in the party, there could be splinter parties created within Umkhonto weSizwe. It's a possibility. I mean, it's the nature of our politics. But infighting is a likely reality if these tensions aren't quelled. So it's going to be interesting to see how JZ, the president, deals with this. I do think that I've always said that whenever you've got disputes within a party, and this is advice I give to any political party, because for those that don't know, I also deal in political consultancy. I mean, I've made mention to a couple of guys in various parties. Whenever you've got issues amongst yourselves as political leaders, try to keep it away from social media, or try to keep it away from the public. Because the moment it gets onto a public platform, that is for anyone to play with. So you could even see Julius Malema with the EFF coming into this and creating a story and sowing further divisions within the party. You could see ANC jumping onto this. You could see that anyone could jump onto this, because they see it as a weak link. They see it as a weak point, rather, and they see it as a chance to strike that was once seen as this dangerous, party, or dangerous challenger towards our constitution. But going back to the point, is there going to be infighting? It's possible. It's possible. I don't want to lie. It's not, it's a case of, it's what we have seen throughout many parties. It's really not even about Umkhonto weSizwe. It's about two big leaders in a party that don't see eye to eye, and it's unfortunate, but, I do think at the end of the day, Floyd Shivambu knew that he was not going to get into a party and find it smooth sailing, especially a party like Umkhonto weSizwe. He's by no means holding the gravitas or the power that he had in the EFF. I mean, one must remember, he started that party with Julius. So I think even going into Umkhonto weSizwe, he would have known that, look, I don't have the same power, but he would have seen himself as an influential person. And that's where Duduzile comes in. She's got the power. So two different situations here.
Yeah, well, we'll keep a very close eye on this because I think there's a lot more to run on this. But you mentioned the EFF. We have recently finally seen the announcement of Mboyeseni Ndlozi resigning from the EFF. He had first resigned from Parliament. This has been like this world's slowest motion accident. He was isolated by Julius and not allowed to go to their party. Then he was first then he resigned from Parliament, and now he's finally resigned from the EFF, claiming that he's going to be out of politics. Where do you think Mbuyiseni Ndlozi is going to end up?
Look, Mbuyiseni Ndlozi for now, for these next 2 years at least, and I'm saying next 2 years because I'm looking at 2026. That's why I'm highlighting next 2 years. I predict that obviously it's going to be in the academia point or the academia sphere. But the question being is he's not joining Mkhonto weSizwe, according to what he's saying. According to him, he says, I'm not joining MK. So he has quelled one fire. The second thing is he's making mention of the fact that, he's made mention of the fact that he's not joining ANC and he's not joining any other political party. Now, two things can happen here. Mbuyiseni Ndlozi could be shaping himself up to start his own political party. It's a possibility. He could be shaping himself up to start a party in 2026 or 2029 and be a crucial figure. The thing is, he knows very well, like I do know, starting a party as in today is the worst time to start a party. You don't start parties 2 years before an election. You start them at least 12 months before, or 10 months before. So that's a possibility. And another thing that I should say, because I sent him a message last night. I said to him, I'm exceptionally proud of him for leaving the political sphere and not joining another party. I think, Mike, for too long, we've been used to politicians leaving parties and joining another party the next day. I mean, I myself didn't do that. I didn't even want to entertain it because you end up becoming what we call a career politician. And one should understand, politics is not a career, It's a duty to serve the country. And the thing's been turned into something of being a career, where people feel like, okay, let me, have lifetime ambitions in this thing. So Mbuyiseni Ndlozi, kudos to him for not turning this into a career and showing that he's diverse and he's versatile. He's able to go into another industry. But do not rule out Mbuyiseni Ndlozi in South African politics. Do not. And Mike, when I say something, you should know that the possibility of it happening is 80%. It's obviously certain things I can't mention, but I would say certain things leading towards something. And that is, do not rule out Mbuyiseni Ndlozi. From what I've heard and from what I know, next election, 2026, if he's ready and things are on point, he can be part of something new, And the way...
And the rumors of him and the ANC, you think there's nothing there?
No, Mike, absolutely nothing. I don't think he would be doing himself justice. You must remember, Mbuyiseni Ndlozi is the voice of the youth, right? The voice of the youth. Now, this is not my opinion. It's what you see wherever you go. You read on Twitter. Now, you need to ask yourself, does the ANC have the voice of the youth? Yet again, it's not an opinion. It's factual, that he does not want to compromise himself at the same time. He still wants to keep this image, of I am an advocate of left-wing revolutionary ideas that supposedly should be championed by the youth. On that point, and on that same breath, Mike, Mbuyiseni Ndlozi is still going to be a very active political commentator. Expect to see him on SABC. Expect to see him on ENCA commenting on certain things, Don't think that he'll just go into the shadows of our politics and just become a lecturer at Wits or whatever, He's still going to be an active voice in our politics. And you must remember, the guy has got a certain strength that many people don't have. He's got the power to be able to drive people with his voice alone outside of an organization. Now, there's something interesting in politics, which I heard from a friend of mine in Mkhonto weSizwe, who said to me, he said, Kuhle, there's two type of characters in politics, and we're talking about popular characters. He says, there are characters which have got the political mileage to go and start their own political parties, organizations, think tanks, by themselves. And there are others who are popular, but don't have that goal, or they don't have the drive, rather not goal. Goal is a bad word, but the drive to say, I'm going to launch my own political party, come and join and see what we can do. Others are just popular because of the organization they're in. They're not popular by themselves. And there's a big difference here. Mbuyiseni Ndlozi is popular by himself. He's got a support. I've seen the support. He's got a huge support amongst varsity students. He's got a huge support amongst students, especially in the Gauteng region. He's got a support amongst the black the black peri-urban class citizens, He's got a support amongst township fellows. So one should never underestimate the guy and think that he's just going to vanish, into the rubbish bins of politics. No, he's not. My advice for us as capitalists and right-wingers is to say, and this is speaking to Mbuyiseni Ndlozi, is to say, we need to go and speak to the man and get him into the political field, and still keep him active. We don't want him to be in the rubbish bins of politics, because who knows who's going to follow after him, At least one person and his ideology. Yet again, Mbuyiseni Ndlozi has not been, which is I think we'll delve into later on in the show, he has never peddled on race-based issues, I think he's always been this revolutionary type of a guy. But he's been revolutionary while being in the 21st century, which is, I don't agree with his politics, but I take off his hat for realizing that we're in the 21st century. We're not in some 19th century communist fiasco where, everyone wants to nationalize land and we just, wait for handouts from government. Everyone wants to work for themselves. And I think Mbuyiseni Ndlozi pushes that. I mean, I listened to the way he fought with Herman Mashaba in the 702 debates, political debates before elections, He said Mashaba was fighting for the small industries. And he said he believes that as black people, we should be fighting to captain big industries like mining. So those aren't communist ideologies by a mile, So hence I say that I might not agree with some of his politics, but I do think that he's in the 21st century. We as right-wingers, and for the importance of debate, essentially debate, we need to keep him in politics, and we still need to engage with him.
You mentioned peddling in race-based policies. You mentioned expropriation of land. We can't not discuss the developments over the last week where the US has cut a lot of social funding to South Africa, has toyed with the idea of offering asylum to Afrikaners, as they put it. Basically, real first-class meddling from the US in South African domestic politics. That has gained certain traction in South Africa. That's created certain threats for South Africa. We got a backlash from President Ramaphosa in his State of the Nation address, where he basically told Donald Trump off. What do you make of all of these things which seem to come at us with some new missive every day? What are you making out of this, Kushle?
Firstly, I think it's to understand that South Africa is not by itself, in the world, in terms of we're not the only ones that are feeling, I don't want to say bullied, but we're not the only ones being attacked by this new Trump administration. Yes, we are being attacked in terms of our racial laws and all sorts. Correct. But we've seen Canada. We've seen even Germany. I mean, Elon Musk was key in this whole vote of no confidence against the German chancellor, So it wouldn't be the first to say that the US does not see itself being involved, or the US is rather being involved in international politics or in other countries' politics. It wouldn't be the first. So we must not think as South Africans we are a special case, or we are, the children, or we're the kid on the playground that only gets bullied. No, many of us are getting bullied. It's the reality. But the thing is how we react to it. That's the big question, And I'm very happy that Ramaphosa has not entertained Donald Trump's reactions or Donald Trump's statements. I'm very happy because the thing is, if we had a president who was lacking in emotional intelligence, Ramaphosa would have been firing back on Twitter, cussing out at Donald Trump. And it's a good thing that he isn't. Ramaphosa is basically saying, Donald Trump in Washington, D.C., follow proper diplomatic channels and consult with me. Why are you trying to be sensational, and try and put me in a beleaguered situation where I seem as the bad guy? That's what Ramaphosa is saying to Donald Trump. And there's a thing of everything being taken out of context here. That is happening. There's a thing of you have one person who says, we're going to expropriate land, we're going to confiscate. I mean, Mike, we heard a big word being used last week, which was confiscating land. And nowhere in the expropriation bill does it speak of confiscating land. It's not even a word or a term that is being used in the expropriation bill, So there's things that have been taken out of proportion, number one. And secondly, when it comes to this new idea, which I've heard being peddled a lot this last week on various platforms of race-based policies, which is now clearly the issue between ourselves and the US. I think it's for us to understand when we as a country post-apartheid or democratic times, when we introduced these, this week, these laws changed from being called Equity Acts and they are now being called race-based policies. But I'll still call them Equity Acts because that's what they are. The idea was to understand that you look at 1994 going backwards. Now, I'm highlighting this for a very important reason. There's an idea that as South Africans were not of a certain, were not all equal, in society. People from peri-urban areas or from Bantustans, townships, or whatever you want to call it, found themselves in a disadvantaged state compared to those who were staying in the urban areas, right? So now, these equity laws such as...
Are you talking about whites?
Yes, I am. I'm talking about white and black people. White, black, colored, Indian, everyone included. That there was no one that was equal when we got to 1994. And it's important for the international world to understand that South Africa is a very diverse country. We've got 4 major racial groups, being white, Indian, colored, I nearly said Chinese, white, Indian, colored, and black people. Now, I highlight this very importantly because no one has had this view. And it's going to be the first time I share this, or anyone shares this for that matter. We cannot be compared to a country like Rwanda, where 96% of the people are black people. Yes, there's Tutsis and Hutus, but the point is they are black people. And they found themselves in a similar situation. You can't compare yourself to a country like Vietnam, where most of the people are natives. You can't compare yourselves to a country like Singapore, where before their leader who changed everything for them, most of the people were still natives. So what you have in South Africa, you've got a mixed group of people that stay together that were not of the same level. And these equity laws were trying to achieve equity, which would bring about equality. Right. So that's one thing that Donald Trump, sitting in the US, doesn't understand. That there's no attack on white people to say that we're going to kill white people or we're going to, hang white people. It's not, there's nothing like that. Firstly, we need to clarify that. We're all struggling in this country. That's one thing. There's no one that can come to me and tell me that this race has it better than the other. Because, for God's sakes, for Pete's sakes, we are all struggling. We are all facing, we all drive on the same roads that have got potholes. We all face the same issue of expensive cost of living. I mean, we buy from the same shops that cost the same amount, We face the same issues of unemployment. I mean, I was listening to Afrikaner people saying that they don't know where they're going to work. I was not so long ago at a conference where I listened to a couple of young Afrikaner gentlemen also saying we don't know where we're going to work. So we all face the same issues. There's no one that can come here and say, oh no, they only face this or these guys face this. We all face crime. We all face murder, rape, whatever it is. So Donald Trump needs to remove this lens of seeing South Africa in the light of the way he sees the US. We're two different countries. We've got our own issues. And I do feel like we should be left to deal with our own issues. And this is nothing against Donald Trump or anything against the East. It's about us as South Africans dealing with our own issues. Mike, I've said from time and time again, do I believe that, do I believe in BE? I do think BE is an equity act that we do need, number one. I won't lie about that. But in the same breath, I am against advancing a certain demographic in society and leaving one behind. That's one thing that I'm against. And which is what I feel like our government tends to do or make a mistake time and time again, is we focus on a certain demographic in society. I mean, we said it in last week's episode. We focus on a certain demographic and we leave one demographic behind. Because you know what that does, Mike? We're not achieving equity. What we're doing is we're having a catch-up program to catch up with, let's be honest. I'm going to be honest here because I have to be honest. We're having a catch-up program to put black people on the same level as white people in terms of an economical level. But what does that mean for your colored people and your Indian people or your newborn white people? Because remember, newborns still need to be part of this economy, right? What does that mean for them? Because they're being left behind. So that's why I'm a champion of equity, where we all go up together. And we go up looking at what you need as a certain demographic. That's okay, you need 1, 2, 3, you need this, you need that, in order for all of us to be equal. A plain and simple example for us to use is, let's say Ramaphosa's 940 billion rand that he's going to carry out, of infrastructure throughout the next 3 years. Let's say Ramaphosa wants to industrialize other cities outside of our major metropolitans of like Joburg and Cape Town. What would be the first focus? The first cities that Ramaphosa would be looking at would be cities like Nelspruit, Pietermaritzburg, Polokwane, as an example. Now, would someone in Joburg say that Ramaphosa, you are being unfair because we're not seeing much industrialization and you're only focusing on those peri-urban areas or those rural municipalities and trying to industrialize them, It's a similar context, a similar analogy here, And we need to have the emotional intelligence to understand we're not of the same level. What we're trying to do, while not abandoning a certain demographic, is we need to uplift certain demographics because, Mike, we need to run away from having mass inequality in our society. That we have to be honest about. We cannot continue living with the same inequality because as capitalists, we need to understand inequality is the ingredients to shape a dangerous communistic revolution, which will come to bite us in the ass if we don't deal with inequality.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you go. That is why we get to hear from all kinds of opinions to our political insider, Kuhle and Kamani. Thank you so much to Pace Car Rental. Thank you so much for sponsoring us. Subscribe, like, enjoy the State of the Nation. We'll be back with more content. Kuhle, thank you so much. And we'll see you again on the State of the Nation Political Insider.
Thanks, Mike.